in New Delhi, this act will be still liable under provision based on this rulings, Your Lordship. And it is also further submitted. The Supreme Court in Bimbandar versus State of Orissa ruled that it is possible that only one person is convicted for criminal conspiracy, provided that the other person or the person with whom he conspired were never caught or enjoyed impunity. In this instant case, it is submitted, it is duly accepted that only A1, A2, A3 were arrested, and only they were be liable to be convicted under Section 120B. Because convicting A4 is impossible due to his demise, and A5 is still absconding, and the last known location is near Bangladesh border. Therefore, because he's not in the custody, it is humbly submitted that only A1, A2, and A3 are liable under this, liable to be convicted under this said offense, Your Lordship. It is also in further state that, Your Lordship, it is pertinent to note that the act of the accused under falls under in the ambit of Section 15, Clause 1, Clause B of Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. In this instant case, the conspiracy of the accused was attempted to cause the death of an Indian Army convoy, which is a public functionary, which is in as defined in the spirit of Section 21 of Indian Penal Code. Therefore, this act blatantly falls under the ambit of Terrorist Act as defined under Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. And since this attempt was made through a conspiracy, it blatantly attacks Section 18 of Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. Hence, the counsel conclude the first fold of the argument by pleading that accused A1, A2, and A3 are liable under Section 120B, read with Section 18 of Unlawful Activities Prevention Act for the criminal conspiracy as defined under Section 120 of Indian Penal Code. The Lordship have any question, the counsel will be happy to answer regarding this full, or the counsel will move on to the next fold, Your Lordship.
I just wanted to ask you that you opened your arguments by saying that you are addressing on final arguments because the statements of the witnesses have been recorded. Did I hear you correctly?
Indeed, Your Lordship.
But as I read the prosecution, as I read the moot problem, this matter is at the stage of framing of charges, and there is no statement recorded finally. These are just 161 statements. Would you like to clarify?
Your Lordship, the clarification we received from the from the moot organizers was that the case is in the final argument stage. We have received the clarification, and the counsel has approached the argument in such a way, Your Lordship.
Okay, so that means the fact at point number 20 saying that this matter is only for the purpose of framing of charges and issuing of process is not correct. Para number 20.
Indeed, Your Lordship. The counsel, if the Lordship may, the counsel will also screen share the clarification we received from the organizers.
Please do that.
Just a minute, Your Lordship.
Okay, you can continue. You can probably.
I can screen share it just a moment. Is my screen visible, Your Lordship?
It's just coming up.
In the final stage of criminal type, the team needs to make the final argument in the competition. Is it visible?
All right, understood.
That's a pleasure, Lordship. So, if the Lordship may, the counsel move on to the next fold of the argument.
Yes, please.
That's a pleasure, Lordship. Lordship, it is humbly submitted that the fact that the act of the accused also attract the Section 121 of Indian Penal Code, that is waging war against the government of India. And in order to prove the waging war against the government of India, the prosecution is required to prove that accused is guilty of waging war against the government of India, or attempt to wage such war, or abates the waging of such war. In this instant case, the accused has attempted to do an explosion in the Indian Army convoy on 15th August 2015. For this purpose, they had planned to use the seized FICNs from A1 and A2 at New Delhi railway station to facilitate the bomb blast. As it is evident from the fact of the case, the accused have extremely ideological difference with the government of India, and for this purpose, they have planned to indulge in the waging war against the government of India by planning an explosion in the Jammu and Kashmir. Honorable Supreme Court has also ruled in Shaukat Guru was a state of Delhi that even a mere attempt to wage war will constitute an offense under 121 of IPC. It is also pertinent to note that it is brought on record of this honorable court that the CDR analysis and the statement of PW2 Iqbal Khan and the PW4, that is the investigating officer, Rupendra Singh, established that the accused had a hate towards this nation And it is also further in the deposition they stated that they intercept the blast code for this criminal conspiracy. And moreover, the council also placed reliance on section 27 of the Evidence Act. Your Lordship, the admission of A3, which led to the discovery of evidence, is also admissible. Supreme Court in Selvi versus State of Karnataka ruled that Section 27 of the Evidence Act permits the derivative usage of the custodial statement in ordinary course of events. 27 is by itself an exception to the 25 and 26 of the Evidence Act, following the provided the procedures mentioned in the 27 has been duly followed. In Indian law, there is no automatic presumption that the custodial statement have been extracted through compulsion, and it is also ruled that confession given to a police officer in the police custody is admissible under the condition of the sections of 27 of Evidence Act. In this instant case, the council draws the bench attention to page number 22 of moot proposition, paragraph number 17.25. Page number 22 and paragraph 17.25. Where it is clearly stated that A3 was in police custody and he admitted that A5 was the main conspirator and he was in the constant touch with the terrorist organization and planned to execute a bomb blast on the Indian Army convoy, and the FICN was received from him to facilitate the bomb blast. And Your Lordship, it is also submitted that in the furtherance of this admission to the investigating officer was able to discover the fact of waging war through CDI records, because the blast code, that is Dulanko Sajnaka Wakat Ayehai, was intercepted by the investigating officer. This fact was also brought on record by the testimony of the investigating officer. This particular fact directly related to the fact in issue. The fact in issue is that is the terrorist act, which itself that is the bomb blast in the planned bomb blast in the Indian Army convoy on 15th August 2015. Therefore, this further established the malified intention of the accused, Your Lordship. The council also relies upon State versus Navjot Sandhu, where the Supreme Court held that the terrorist act prompted by an intention to strike the sovereign authority of the government that amounts to waging war, irrespective of the number of numbers involved, irrespective of the force employed or the chances of the success. It still amounts to waging war. It is true, in this instant case, the accused were not successful due to the valiant effort of the Delhi Special Force. Even so, their act still attracts section 121 of IPC as the success to success of the design to wage war is irrelevant. Under the code, attempt to wage war, abatement to wage war, and waging war all treated in the very same parlance. Therefore, the council concludes this fold of the argument by stating that accused is liable under section 121 of Indian Penal Code. If the Lordship have any question, the council would like to answer it, or the council may move on to the next fold of the argument.
You can move on to the next point.
Much obliged, Your Lordship. Lordship, the final fold of the argument is the concealment of the waging war, and in order to prove the same, the prosecution is required to prove that there's a concealment by an act, by an illegal omission of existence of a design to wage war against government of India, and he intended by such concealment to facilitate, or he knew that such concealment will facilitate the waging war. In this instant case, all the accused had prior knowledge about the currency was FICN, and it was used to get the explosive to carry out the bomb blast in Pulwama. And though A5 was the mastermind, each of the accused were aware of the design to wage war against government of India. They concealed such design with a malified intention, which was well established in the previous world. And also, Supreme Court in Shaukat Hussain Guru was a state of NCT, Delhi, ruled that it is pertinent to note that section 39 of CRPC, which places the burden of the person who were aware of any offense of the commission or of the intention of any other person to commit any offense punishable under section 121 to 126 of IPC to forthwith inform to the nearest magistrate or the police officer of such commission or intention. In this instant case, the accused never discharged a burden mandated under section 39 of CRPC. They never informed to any police officer, nor to any judicial magistrate, nor any reasonable excuse was made by the accused. Hence, in the absence of proof of his, and it is also further stated that in the absence of proof of his involvement in the waging war against the government of India, this particular provision 123 will still constitute an offense still constitute a standalone offense, and an accused can be always convicted for the concealment of such fact under 123 of IPC. Hence, the council concludes this fold of the argument by stating that the accused is liable under 123 of IPC, and the council just like to add additional point by stating that in this instant case, since they acted as a gang, as mandated within the in the spirit of definition, and the council just requires 1 minute of permission to summarize the entire argument, Your Lordship. Much obliged. And since in this instant case they acted as a gang in the spirit of section 2 clause L of UAP Act, and since they attempted for a terrorist activity, they are blatantly liable under section 20 of Unlawful Activities Act. And therefore, the council conclude the entire argument by stating that in this instant case, the act of the accused attracts section 120B, 121, 123 of IPC, read with section 18 and 20 of unlawful activities provision. The bench has any question, the council may be happy to answer.
Yeah, I had one question. You said that since there was a recovery affected from the accused number 1 and accused number 2, it is admissible against them. Is that right?
Indeed, Your Lordship.
Yes, but in the seizure memo, those 2 witnesses who actually witnessed the seizure is it correct that none of them have been examined?
Indeed, Your Lordship, but the council also like to state upon the fact that the minor contradiction will not be amount to vitiating the entire trial. The council also relying upon.
There is no contradiction. I'm asking you a specific question that the witnesses to the seizure memo, have they been examined?
Indeed, not, Your Lordship, but it is not specifically mentioned.
If they are not examined, then how have you proved the seizure from the accused?
And if you don't prove the recovery, then the statement the police in custody is inadmissible. So a major chunk of your evidence will go.
Your Lordship, the council would like to answer this particular question by stating that in this instant case, the council relied upon 27 of Evidence Act was related to the CDR records, and this seizure report, particularly with the seizure report, will be completely dealt with my co-counsel. But still, this council would like to state that in this instant case, the investigating officers have testified in this court, and the court, in the framing of charges and in the production of document, have examined all the relevant factors and all the possibilities, and then admitted this into the evidence. Therefore, the council relies on the testimony of investigating officer, Lordship.
All right.
Much obliged.
Am I audible, Your Lordship?
Just give me a minute, please. Yes, you're audible.
This is counsel number 2 appearing on behalf of the state. The accused are charged under section 489B, 489C, and section 201 of IPC. The counsel would be dealing with this argument in a twofold manner. In the first fold of the argument, the counsel would like to prove that the accused are liable under section 489B, 489C, and section 201 of IPC. In the second fold of the argument, the counsel would be dealing with the issue of the charges framed under section 17 and section 16 and 17 of UAP Act. In the case of Girdhari Lal versus State of Madhya Pradesh, that to be guilty under section 489B, it should be established that the notes are counterfeit. The accused should have sold, bought, received, or trafficked the forged currency notes. And at the time of doing an offense, he must have either known or had a reason to believe that the notes was counterfeit. If all the 3 essential ingredients are satisfied, then an offense under section 489B is made out. The first essential ingredient that needs to be established is that the notes seized from the accused are counterfeit. In this instant case, the currency seized from the accused was sent to examination to the Central Forensic Science Laboratory. The CFSL, after examination, concluded that the notes were high-quality fake currencies. According to Section 45 of Evidence Act, the opinion of experts is a relevant piece of evidence, and the evidence can be used by the court by Section 293 of CRPC. In the case of Samarjit Singh versus State of Punjab, they raised an issue whether the expert evidence given by the Central Forensic Science Laboratory on examination of fake currencies without reasons can be relayed or not. The court held that the experts can even conclude just by seeing the notes as to whether the same is fake or genuine. In this instant case, the report given by the CFSL authorities without reasons cannot make the evidence inadmissible or weak because the expert can give his opinion just by seeing the notes as to whether the same is fake or genuine. So the counsel humbly submits that the notes seized from the accused are counterfeit in nature. The counsel would like to invite the attention of the bench towards Annexure G of the moot problem. If your lordship permit, my researcher will share the screen.
I just have it. Just give me a minute.
Annexure what?
Annexure G.
Page?
It's page 35.
Are your lordship with me?
Yes, I have it.
Yeah. The counsel would like to invite the attention of the bench towards 12th row, second column.
Yes.
The serial number which is being printed is 4CG551567.
Yes.
And the counsel would like to invite the attention of the bench towards 16th row. Second column.
Correct.
4CG551567.
Yes.
And similarly, the 13th row and the 14th row, column 1 has the same serial numbers.
Correct.
So from the annexure G basically refers to the notes which have the serial numbers of the notes which have been seized from the accused. From the bare perusal of this annexure, it is very evident that the notes having the same serial numbers are counterfeit in nature. Apart from this expert evidence, from the bare perusal of annexure G, it is evident that the notes are counterfeit notes since they have the same serial numbers. So, if your lordship is satisfied with the argument, the council would like to move on.
This argument I've taken note of, but just tell me, is the CFSL report on record, and is the evidence of the CFSL officer on record?
Indeed, your lordship, it is on record and it is also been marked and submitted before the court.
What is the annexure number?
Indeed, lordship, the moot organizers have clarified that they have been marked as exhibits and it has been submitted before the court. If you want,
I'll take a statement. So it has been clarified to you that the report is on record as an exhibit, and also the witness was also examined. Even the CFSL officer was also examined. Is it?
Indeed, your lordship, it has been presumed that the witness have been examined since the arguments are in the final stage.
No, there is no presumption that he has been examined, but there is only a clarification to you that a report has been filed, correct? So I'm only going to assume there is a report, but not that there is any witness statement.
Indeed, your lordship. Apart from the seizure report, Annexure G clearly states that the notes are counterfeit in nature.
Is this report admissible without the witness statement?
Indeed, your lordship. If
the report will be admissible without the witness statement?
Indeed, your lordship. The council would like to refer to section 102 of CRPC. 102 of CRPC does not place that the seizure should be done in the presence of witness. So
I'm not talking about seizure. I'm talking about your CFSL witness report. Will it be admissible without the witness statement of the CFSL officer?
Indeed, your lordship. If your lordship is satisfied with the CFSL report, if it is prima facie proves that there is no discrepancies regarding the CFSL report, there is no need for any examination of witness.
No, but where do you get it from? Who has proved the CFSL report?
Your lordship, the council would like to ask you to repeat the question again.
Who has proved the CFSL report by stepping into the witness box? It is only a piece of paper unless somebody steps into the witness box and authenticates it. Why should we believe it?
Has the witness Inspector Akash Singh or Rupinder Singh referred to the CFSL report in their statements?
Indeed, your lordship, it is presumed that the witness have been examined since the moot problem is very silent about whether the witness have been examined or not. And apart from the CFSL report, by prima facie from the seizure, it establishes the fact that the notes are counterfeit. So there is no discrepancies regarding whether the notes are counterfeit or not. So the council would like to humbly rely upon Annexure G to prove that the notes are counterfeit apart from the CFSL report. If your lordship are convinced with the argument, the council would like to move on. Indeed, your lordship, much obliged. Apart from the expert evidence, by bare perusal of the notes, many notes have the same serial numbers, which prima facie establishes the fact that the notes are counterfeit in nature. In the case of Madan Lal versus State of West Bengal, the court held that a person can be convicted under section 489B and 489C when the counterfeit notes are of the nature or description that a mere look at them would convince any person of average intelligence that it was a counterfeit note. So from the mere look at the notes, it is apparent that many notes have the same serial numbers, which establish the fact that they are counterfeit in nature. Since the first essential requisite under this section, that is the notes are counterfeit in nature, is proved, the council would like to move on to the second essential requisite. That is, the accused should have received or trafficked the fake currency notes. In this instant case, the accused A1 and A2 had received the notes from A3. The CDA records and the phone data of the phone seized from the accused A1 and A2 established their movement from Madhya Pradesh to Malda on 23/2/2015. After collecting the fake currency notes, A1 and A2 left to Delhi from Malda and was caught by the police in the Delhi railway station on 25/2/2015. According to section 114 of Evidence Act, the court can presume the existence of any fact which it thinks it has likely to have happened regarding the common course of natural events. So from the natural turn of events and from the analysis of the CDI records, it is proved that A1 and A2 had received the notes from A3. It is also humbly submitted that A1 and A2 also trafficked the notes, fake currency notes, by transporting them from one place to another. The accused person carrying a sizable quantity of fake currency notes on a train or otherwise in a concealed manner would amount to active transportation of such currency notes at the time when the accused was apprehended. Therefore, this is not a case of mere dormant possession, but active transportation of the currency notes, which would fall under the expression traffics in such currencies under Section 489B. A3 had given the FACN consignment to A1 and A2, which would come under the definition of trafficking under Section 489B. So the second essential requisite that the accused should have trafficked the notes is being satisfied in this instant case. The counsel would like to move on to the third essential requisite that the accused should have the knowledge that the notes were counterfeit in nature. In the case of Uma Shankar versus State of Chhattisgarh, the Supreme Court held that mens rea is an essential condition to be present for conviction of economic offences under Section 489B and 489C of IPC. Without the presence of mens rea, selling, buying, or receiving from another person or trafficking is not enough to constitute an offence under Section 489B of IPC. In this instant case, the accused had the knowledge that the notes were counterfeit. This can be proved basically by three reasons. In this instant case, the notes were fake can be identified by the naked eye, since many notes had same serial numbers. So the defense that the notes were of high quality and only an expert in the field of analyzing currencies could only be aware cannot be taken. The Supreme Court in the case of M. Mammootty versus State of Karnataka held that if the notes were of such a nature that a mere look at them would convince anybody it was counterfeit, a presumption against the accused can be drawn that he had the knowledge that the notes were counterfeit in nature. In this instant case, by virtue of Annexure G of the moot problem, it is very clear that many notes had the same serial numbers, and from the naked eye, it is very apparent that the notes had the same serial numbers, which draws a presumption against the accused that he had the knowledge that the notes were counterfeit in nature. So the counsel like to humbly submit that the accused had the knowledge that the notes were genuine, the notes were counterfeit in nature. In the case of Deepak Bhai Jagdish Chandra Patel versus State of Gujarat, the court held that apart from the possession of counterfeit note, there exist circumstances that clearly and irresistibly to the intention to use the notes on the public. Such intention could be proved by collateral circumstances that the accused had palmed off such notes before, or that he was in possession of such notes in large numbers, that the possession for any other purpose was inexcusable. The accused had confessed that he had trafficked the FACN consignment several times before during the investigation of NIA. After the confession, that particular statement was corroborated by the CDR records of the accused A1 and A2 that their presence was in Malta on 24th and 25th of July 2014, and they have also visited Malta second time in the month of 24th and 25th of September 2014. According to Section 27 of Evidence Act, if the confession leads to discovery of a fact, then the confession is admissible. The Supreme Court in the case of State of Maharashtra versus Damu Gopinath Shinde, the court held that if any fact is discovered in a search made on the strength of any information obtained from a prisoner, such a discovery is a guarantee that the information supplied by the prisoner is true. The information may be confessional or non-inculpatory in nature, but if it results in the discovery of a fact, it becomes admissible. So it is established that A1 and A2 had received the fake consignments before, and they have been habitual offenders since the year 2014, and since they have trafficked notes several times before the happening of this event, it is very evident that the accused have trafficked several times before, and they are aware that the notes are counterfeit in nature. So the counsel like to humbly submit that the accused had the knowledge that the notes are counterfeit. Indeed, Your Lordship, the counsel accepts the fact that a confession is not admissible in a court of law, but Section 27 of Evidence Act is a clear exception to Section 25, which clearly states that if a confession is corroborated by a fact which has been subsequently discovered by the NIA authorities, then it is an admissible piece of evidence. In this instant case, the CDI records clearly state that they have palmed off notes before, and they have traveled from Madhya Pradesh to Malta. This clearly establishes that they have the knowledge that the notes were counterfeit, and they have also traveled from Madhya Pradesh to Malta to traffic notes several times before, and the accused are habitual offenders under an offence under Section 49B. If Your Lordship is satisfied with this part of the argument, the counsel would like to move on.
Is it correct that the CDR records have also not been substantiated by evidence under 65B of Evidence Act? Is it correct?
Indeed, Your Lordship, the counsel would like to humbly submit that 65B applies to only secondary evidence. In this instant case, the phone which has been seized from the accused had directly been submitted to the court of law, which does not require a 65B certificate under Evidence Act. So the counsel would like to humbly submit that the requirement of Section 65B is not required in this instant case. If your lordship is convinced with this argument, the council like to move on. Indeed, your lordship, much obliged. It is also pertinent to note the fact that the accused had carried a large number of counterfeit notes, and it was carried in a concealed manner in a secret cavity of the bag, which could lead to a presumption that the accused intended to use the same as genuine. In the case of Ray Amirjan, the division bench of Mysore High Court held that the counterfeit notes concealed could lead to a presumption that he intended to use the same as genuine. In the case of public prosecutor versus Rautala, it was held that when large amount of notes are found in a man's possession and the circumstances in which they were so found may themselves constitute a sufficient ground for drawing the inference that the attention was to use them as genuine. So it can be said that due to the large amount of counterfeit notes involved and the fact it was trafficked from one place to another place in a concealed manner, it creates an undoubtful inference that the accused had the knowledge that the notes were counterfeit and had the intention to use the same as genuine. So it is humbly submitted that the accused are liable under Section 489B of IPC. The accused are also charged under Section 489C of IPC and for the possession of high quality fake currency notes. In the case of Karnakaran Nadar versus State of Kerala, it was held that for an offence under Section 489C to be made out, the note should be counterfeit. The accused should have been found in possession of the counterfeit notes, and he must also have the reason to believe that the notes are forged, and he must have intended to use the same as genuine. It is humbly submitted during the personal search of A1 and A2. A1 and A2 had the possession of fake currency notes of rupees 2,000 denomination, having face value equivalent to rupees 10 lakhs. The seizure was made in the presence of witnesses, and thus it is humbly submitted that A1 and A2 had the possession of currency notes, knowing that the notes were counterfeit to use them as genuine. A3 is also liable to be charged under Section 489C, since A3 is a co-conspirator who involved in trafficking of fake currency notes. Your Lordship, the council humbly accepts the fact that A3 was not found in possession, but it is pertinent to point out the fact that A3 was a co-conspirator who involved in trafficking of fake currency notes. In the case of R. Balakrishnan Pillai versus State of Kerala, it was held that a conspirator may come and leave the conspiracy at any time during the pendency of the conspiracy, and any and every such conspirator will be liable for a subsequent act of the conspirators. In this instant case, A1 and A2 had been found in possession of the counterfeit notes, and A3 will be liable under Section 489C for possession, since the A3 is liable for a subsequent act of the co-conspirators, who's A1 and A2 in this instant case. And A1 and A2 has been found in possession of counterfeit notes. So A1, A2 and A3 are liable for under Section 489C, since there is a conspiracy which has been established by my previous co-counsel in this instant case. So A1, A2 and A3 is liable under Section 489C of IPC. This particular argument was upheld in the case of Ramjan Haji Adhikan versus State of Gujarat, where the court held that when the conspiracy is established between A1, A2 and A3, where A3 supplied the notes to A1 and A2, all the three accused can be liable under Section 489B, 489C, read with 120B of IPC, though A3 did not have the possession of counterfeit notes. In this instant case, there exists a conspiracy where A3 supplied the counterfeit notes to A1 and A2 to deliver them in Pulwama. It is also evident from the CDR records and the CERT expert evidence that A1 and A2 had communicated with A3 on 23/2/2015, and A1 and A2 had traveled from Malwa to Malda to collect the FICN from A3, who resides in Malda in Kaliachik village. After receiving the consignment, the very same day, they left from Delhi to Malda. They left to Delhi from Malta. So from the facts and circumstances, it is very clear that A1 and A2 received the FICN consignment from A3. Hence, it is most humbly submitted that all the three accused are liable under Section 489B and 489C of 489C, read with 120B of IPC. Your Lordship, the council would like to ask for extra time of 4 minutes to summarize the arguments. Much obliged, Your Lordship. The council would like to move on. The council would like to humbly submit that an offence under Section 15(1)(3)(a) is made of Unlawful Prevention Activities Act is made, since all the three accused involved themselves in smuggling of high quality fake currencies to damage the monetary stability, which amounts to Terrorist Act under Section 15. Since all the three accused had committed a terrorist act under Section 15, the accused are liable to be punished under Section 16 of UAP Act. The accused is also liable under Section 17 of UAP Act, which states that if a terrorist gang actually involves in raising for funds, for the terrorist activity, whether or not such funds are used for the terrorist act, it amounts to an offence under Section 17 of UAP Act. The explanation B to this section clearly states that raising of funds also includes smuggling of fake currency notes. So in this instant case, the notes have been smuggled for the purpose of bomb blast in Pulwama. It is also pertinent to note under Section 43E of UAP Act, a presumption against the accused can be drawn if arms or explosive or any other substance under Section 15 is recovered from the possession of the accused. The council would like to invite the attention of the bench to the word any other, which denotes everything which has been used for the committing of an offence under Section 15 of the Act. In this instant case, the accused involved in the trafficking of high-quality fake currency notes, and the accused was caught in possession of the high-quality fake currency notes, which is duly established by the Srisha report. So, a presumption that the accused has done an offence under Section 15 is drawn by virtue of Section 43. It is also pertinent to point out that Section 43 is a statutory presumption, and if an accused is caught in possession of fake currency notes, it is presumed that the terrorist act is made under Section 15 of UAP Act. So the council would like to humbly submit that an offence under Section 16 and 17 of UAP Act is made in this instant case. It is also humbly submitted that the accused are charged under Section 201 of IPC. An accused can be liable under the section only when the following essential ingredients are satisfied: that there must be an offence that has been committed, a person should have caused the disappearance of any evidence of the crime committed, it should be done with an intention of screening or saving the culprit from the punishment. In this instant case, all the three essential ingredients are satisfied. A3 was aware that A5 has committed a crime of trafficking of fake currency since A3 received the currency notes from A5. A3 also destroyed all evidences in A5's house with the intention of screening A5 from the offence under Section 49B, which was duly established by an independent witness named Shah Rukh Khan. Since all the essential ingredients are satisfied, that the accused are liable under Section 201 of IPC. If your lordship are satisfied with the arguments, the council would like to move on to the prayer. Much obliged, your lordship. Wherefore, in the light of facts stated, issues raised, arguments advanced, and authorities cited, it is humbly prayed that this honorable court may be pleased to hold, adjudge, and declare that Samir, Monu, and Kallu at Mama to be liable for the offence under Section 121, 123, 120B, 201, 489B, 489C, read with Section 16, 17, 18, and 20 of Unlawful Prevention Activities Act, and pass any other order it may deem fit in the interest of justice, equity, and good conscience. All of which is most humbly and respectfully submitted. It was an honor pleading before this court. The counsel for the prosecution rests the arguments. Much obliged, your lordship.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everyone. If it may please the court, the council seeks permission to collectively refer the bench as your honors.
There is too much of background noise. We can't hear
From
you
my
very
mic,
well.
Your Honor. From my mic, Your Honor.
Yes.
Is it clear?
Better
Like,
now. Yes, better now.
Yes, Your Honor. Your Honor, if it may please the court, the council seeks permission to collectively refer the bench as your honors. Replies. Your Honors, this is counsel number 1, along with the counsel and researcher, on behalf of the defense, representing the accused in the case of Samir and others. Your Honor, the counsel will address the court for 15 minutes and would prove to you that there are insufficient evidences to charge and hold accused guilty under Section 121, 123, 201, and 120 capital B of Indian Penal Code 1860. However, my co-counsel will address the court for 13 minutes and will deal with sections 489 capital B and 489 capital C of Indian Penal Code 1860 and the relevant charges under section 16, 17, 18, and 20 of Unlawful Prevention Activities Act 1967. Your Honor, the Honorable Court has jurisdiction over the present matter under section 13 of the National Investigation Agency Act 2008. Your Honor, the present case is a perfect example of police framing some innocents for the crimes they didn't commit. Your Honors, a perfect example of police framing some innocents to hide their own incompetency to identify and catch the real perpetrators. Your Honor, on 23rd February, police received a secret information that 2 people were carrying high-quality, counterfeit, fake currency notes from Malda to New Delhi via Farakka Express. Your Honor, on 25th February 2015, the police searched the whole train and found 2 bags of fake currency notes hidden in a train compartment. Your Honor, when the police were searching the train, the real perpetrators or the real carriers fled. But unfortunately, Your Honor, two innocent and poor people were traveling in that train. The police arrested those two. But later they realized that they have caught the wrong people. But in order to hide their shortcomings and incompetency, they forged the statements of the accused. They forged the charge sheet. Moreover, Your Honor, the evidences like seizure memo, arrest memo, CFSL reports, CDR reports were also forged and planted by the police and the NIA. And today, Your Honor, Worthy Prosecution Council is trying to cover up the incompetency of the police and National Investigation Agency. Your Honor, to speculate is one thing and to prove is another. The case is at its concluding stage, and the defense counsel asserts the innocence of all the accused in a simple case that is simply fabricated. Mere common sense will guide the members sitting in the court to acquit all the accused of the case. Your Honor, the fictional story created by the prosecution to throw the dirt on the accused in this case will definitely win an Oscar, but not this case. Your Honor, the counsel agrees with the prosecution that this case is indeed an open and shut case, because this case should have been shut as soon as prosecution opened such fabricated case. Your Honor, the defense counsel contend the prosecution's case on two major grounds. First, that the evidences provided by the prosecution are unreliable and inadmissible. And second, that there are insufficient evidences to prove the charges and accused under section 121, 123, 201, and 120 capital B of Indian Penal Code 1860. Your Honor, moving on to the first submission, the counsel submits that the prosecution has repeatedly and heavily relied on the seizure memo, CFSL report, CDR reports, and the confessional statements. However, all these evidences are unreliable. Your Honor, the counsel would like to move on to the foundation stone of the prosecution's case, that is the seizure memo. Your Honor, the seizure memo is one of the primary evidences presented by the prosecution. However, Your Honor, the same cannot be admitted in the court. Your Honor, according to the case of A. Toddsdeen versus Union of India, SCC 2050, as presented on page number 10 of the compendium, Your Honor, the counsel seeks permission to present the compendium. Much obliged, Your Honor. Your Honor, if you may refer to page number 10 of the compendium. Page number 10 of the compendium, the Honorable Supreme Court held that merely because the seizure memo at the time of the recovery was attested by two independent witnesses, that would not lend credibility to the same. Such credibility would attach to it only if said two independent witnesses are produced as a witness and the accused is afforded an opportunity to examine them. Similarly, in the present case, Your Honor, Ravi Kumar has been indicated as an independent witness in the seizure memo prepared by the police. Your Honor, first of all, Ravi Kumar never signed or attested the seizure memo. Moreover, his statements were never recovered by the police and never recorded by the police. In addition to it, Your Honor, he was never presented as a witness in the court. His statements were not recorded by the court. Therefore, Your Honor, in absence of Ravi Kumar in the court, the seizure memo does not hold credibility, therefore cannot be relied on, which itself makes the seizure of fake currency notes, train tickets, and the mobile phones from the accused. And Your Honor, the defense counsel contends and asserts the same, that the notes were never in the possession of the accused, and they have been framed wrongfully. Your Honor, moving on to the next report, stated by the Worthy Prosecution Council. Your Honor, that is the CFSL report. Your Honor, the CFSL report in the present case is unreliable and inadmissible because, Your Honor, according to Section 45 of the Indian Evidence Act, the opinion of an expert must be given orally, and mere report or certificate by him is not an evidence. Your Honor, in case of state of HP versus Edward Samuel Chetron, Criminal Law Journal 2001, presented on page number 21 of the memorial and page number 14 of the compendium. The court held that report by an expert is necessary. However, the report cannot be considered as an evidence unless the person preparing the report is examined in the case. Similarly, in the present case, Your Honor, the CFSL was produced. However, the expert witness who prepared the CFSL report is not listed off the prosecution list. Hence, the report presented is not reliable, Your Honor, because it is inconclusive and therefore is inadmissible. Additionally, Your Honor, if you may refer to para 17.35 of the charge sheet presented on page number 2 of the compendium, the charge sheet itself states that the CFSL did not provide any explanation about their conclusion that the notes were of high quality counterfeit nature. Your Honor, according to the case of Amar Singh Ramji Bhai Barot versus State of Gujarat, 2005 SCC, AIR 2005, presented on page number 18 of the compendium, the court held that the court does not become functus officio after a report of an expert. The court in the mentioned case overturned the opinion of an expert since the proper reasons by expert were not provided. Your Honor, Your Honor, in order to prove fake currency notes as of high quality counterfeit nature, the notes must fall within the definition of high quality counterfeit nature according to Schedule 3 of the UAPA Act, presented on page number 40 of the compendium. Your Honor, in order to prove the notes are of high quality counterfeit nature, it must be provided that there was an exact copy of security features of notes such as latent image, watermark, and see-through registration of notes. Similarly, in the present case, Your Honor, the prosecution counsel has repeatedly relied on Annexure G of the charge sheet. Your Honor, Annexure G of the charge sheet itself proves that these notes does not fall under the definition of third schedule of UAPA Act, because, Your Honor, these these notes can be merely seen as fake currency notes by mere vision. Therefore, Your Honor, it does not fall under the definition of the Schedule 3 of UAPA Act under the definition of high quality counterfeit currency notes. Moreover, Your Honor, the Honorable Prosecution Counsel has relied on the case of Samarjeet Singh versus State of Punjab on page number 19 of their written submissions. Your Honor, the case of Samarjeet Singh versus State of Punjab does not apply in the present case, Your Honor, because, Your Honor, the statements given by the court in Samarjeet Singh versus State of Punjab were mere obitual dicta. However, Your Honor, there was a presence of 5-page exhibit in that case where the expert explained that why the currency notes fell in the definition of high quality counterfeit notes. Therefore, Your Honor, it is most humbly submitted that the notes presented by the prosecution and the police cannot fall under the definition of such high quality counterfeit nature, and therefore, Your Honor, the report of the CFSL is first of all inadmissible, and even if it admitted, it is completely inconclusive. Therefore, the court shall take decision on itself and should not rely on the CFSL reports. Similarly, in the present case, Your Honor, the charge sheet itself states that no proper reasons were given by CFSL. Therefore, it is most humbly submitted that such indiscrepancy within the documents of the prosecution's case makes the evidence unreliable itself. Moving on to the next submission, Your Honor, it is submitted that the electronic records can also be received as an evidence, but electronic evidence is more susceptible to tampering than any other documentary evidence. The standard of proof about their authenticity and accuracy has to be more stringent. The source and authenticity are two key factors of the admissibility of electronic record. In the present case, the authenticity of CDR is questionable and cannot be proved, Your Honor. Your Honor, according to landmark judgment of Anwar PV versus PK Bashir, as explained on page number 20 and 21 of the memorial and page number 17 of the compendium, the court held that the electronic record produced in form of secondary evidence can be admissible only when compliance certificate under section 65 capital B is present in the code. Your Honor, in the present case, the data of mobile phones were not directly shown. However, they were shown by a CDR report by CERT. Your Honor, in the case of Harpal Singh versus State of Punjab, Criminal Law Journal 2017, presented on page number 34 and 35 of the compendium, the court stated secondary evidence in form of CDR reports that are called tolls of a cell phone is inadmissible as an evidence in absence of production of certificate under 65 capital B, subsection 4 of Indian Evidence Act 1872. In the present case, Your Honor, the mobile phones presented in the present case have not directly shown as a primary evidence. However, Your Honor, the CDR reports were presented by the prosecution. Therefore, Your Honor, such CDR reports cannot be relied on as the authenticity of the same cannot be proved. Therefore, Your Honor, the Honorable Court cannot accept such evidences. Moreover, Your Honor, the connection between all the accused is proved by the prosecution through through the CDR reports only. Therefore, Your Honor, in absence of such evidences, the production of connection and all the connection between the accused cannot be proved by the prosecution. Your Honor, Moving on to, Your Honor, if you do not have any query, the counsel seeks permission to move on to the next fold of the argument.
I have a question for you. That
Yes,
what is
Your
the
Honor.
answer to the annexure which shows that the numbers on the currency were repetitive, and that itself would be sufficient to show that these notes are fake currency notes?
No, Your Honor. Much obliged, Your Honor. Your Honor, the counsel, as stated by counsel earlier, in order to a note to fall under the definition of high quality counterfeit nature, it must fall under the definition of Schedule 3 of UAPA Act, which is presented on page number 40 of the compendium. Your Honor, it must be proved that the notes were exact copy of the real notes. Your Honor, the repetition in the numbers of the notes itself proves that these notes are not of high quality counterfeit nature. Therefore, Your Honor, it does not fall under the
Well, it may
definition of.
not be of a high quality. I understand that is only for the purpose of the section 15. But the fact that it's a fake currency note for the purpose of section 489B and 489C, how do you answer that question?
Much obliged, Your Honor. Your Honor, first of all, the counsel and the defense counsel and the accused asserts that the notes were never procured from them, and the seizure was never there made from them.
Understood.
Yeah, even if, Your Honor, even if we accept that the seizure was done, Your Honor, the CFSL reports are itself inconclusive because they have not given any reason to prove.
Counsel, I'm asking you once again a very simple question. I am agreeing with you. There is no admissible CFSL report. I'm agreeing with you. We do not know whether this is a high quality fake currency note or not. But assuming if the seizure has been made from the accused and these are the duplicating numbers on the fake currency notes, what is your explanation for that in view of the judgment of Samarjeet, which has been referred to by the prosecution?
Much obliged, Your Honor. Your Honor, the Samarjeet judgment, as stated by the counsel, Your Honor, the statement of the prosecution was the mere obiter dicta in that case. However, Your Honor, a dedicated 5 exhibits were present there in the case of Samarjeet Singh versus State of Punjab, which gave a proper explanation that why these notes were of high quality counterfeit nature.
Counsel, you are just arguing on high quality. I'm asking you a simple question. Is it a correct proposition of law that if a person is found with 250 notes and in those 250 notes there are recurring numbers, it will amount to his knowledge that it was fake currency note? Just please answer this question.
No, Your Honor. No, Your Honor. The knowledge can.
What is the presumption? What is the presumption to be raised if a person is in possession of 250 notes with recurring numbers in large quantities? What is the presumption to be drawn in normal course of events? As a counsel, please assist the court.
Much obliged, Your Honor. Your Honor, this mere possession does not amount to the offense under section 489 and 489C, ma'am, because Your Honor, the case should be of active possession, not the mere dormant possession. Active transportation, or not mere the dormant possession.
Okay.
The counsel seeks 2 minutes extra from the court to complete the arguments.
All right.
Much obliged. Your Honor, Section 121 criminalizes the waging of war against the government of India. Your Honor, in the case of State versus the Jodh Sandhu at Afzal on page number 24 of the memorial, and as presented on page number 26 and 27 of the compendium, the Honorable Court held, in order to constitute a crime under Section 121, the accused shall have done more than preparation to wage the war. The phrase "more than preparation" refers that the accused should have in possession of weapons and must try to use it against the government of India. Your Honor, mens rea is one of the most important elements of the crime. Your Honor, the state is trying to prove the guilt of the accused on the basis of confessional statement given to the police. Your Honor, according to Section 25 of the Indian Evidence Act, no statement given to the police shall be proved against him. In the case of Deepak Bhai Jagdish Chandra Patel versus State of Gujarat, as presented on page number 21 and 22 of the compendium, the court held that the confession made to police is inadmissible by the virtue of Section 25 and cannot be relied on. The court held that any statement given to the police during the investigation, including any statement given under 161 of the CRPC, are unreliable by the virtue of Section 25 and 24 of Indian Evidence Act and barred the admissibility under Section 160 of CRPC. Moreover, Your Honor, the worthy prosecution counsel has relied on Section 27 of the Evidence Act. Your Honor, the Section 27 of the Indian Evidence Act applies only when there are corroborative evidences to prove the statements of the accused. However, Your Honor, in the present case, the police was unable to find any corroborative evidence to prove that the statements of the accused led to new discovery of facts or any evidences. Therefore, Your Honor, the statements given by the accused and to the accused are inadmissible and cannot be relied on the present case. Your Honor, the present case has no evidence to prove that there was a plan to wage a war against the government of India. The plan to attack the army convoy is only present in the statements of the accused given to the police as a confession, which are unreliable and inadmissible. Hence, the conviction of the accused cannot be made on the basis of such evidences. Additionally, according to the prosecution, there was ideological differences between the government and the organization. Your Honor, mere ideological differences between organization and the government of India does not show any mens rea and does not show that they planned to wage a war against the government only on the basis of ideological differences. Your Honor, in order to prove Section 123, the prosecution needs to prove that there was a concealment by an act or by illegal omission of existence of design to wage a war against the government of India. Your Honor, in the present case, there is no evidence to show on the first that there was a plan to wage a war. Therefore, Your Honor, the question of concealment does not arise, and the accused cannot be held liable under Section 123 of Indian Penal Code 1860. Your Honor, moving on to the next last charge, the charge of Section 201 of IPC. Your Honor, in the case of Palvinder Kaur versus State of Punjab, the court held, in order to establish the charge under Section 201 of Indian Penal Code, it is essential to prove that an offence has been committed. Mere suspicion that it might have been committed is not sufficient. In the present case, there is no evidence to show that the accused concealed or destroy any evidence. The only reason the accused was charged with the particular section was because the police was unable to find any evidence and assumed that the accused might have destroyed the evidence. Hence, the accused cannot be held guilty under Section 201 of Indian Penal Code. Your Honor, the counsel submits that the criminal, in order to prove the criminal conspiracy, according to the case of V.C. Shukla versus State, the court held that in order to prove criminal conspiracy, there must be a direct or circumstantial evidence to show that there was an agreement between two or more people to commit an offence. Your Honor, in case of Baksheesh Singh versus State of Punjab, as presented on page number 24 of the compendium, the court held that the circumstances relied upon in the conviction of the accused must be fully established, and chain of the evidences furnished by those circumstances must be as far as complete to not to leave any reasonable ground for the conclusion of the statement with the innocence of the accused, and further must be as such to show that within all human probability the acts must have been done by the accused. Your Honor, in the present case, the chain of circumstantial evidences is broken, or rather I say, has not even started, because worthy prosecution counsel has based its case on the circumstantial report of the CDR reports and 161 statement in order to link the accused to determine the location of the accused. However, such evidences are unreliable, Your Honor, and the circumstances cannot be relied on such evidences. Moreover, Your Honor, mere contact between the accused does not show that there was an agreement between the accused to commit an offence. Your Honor, moreover, there is absence of any telephonic transcript between the accused. Had there been any presence of telephonic transcript, the accused could have been charged under it. But in possession, in absence of such telephonic transcripts, the accused cannot be held guilty solely on the basis of connection in order to prove the charge of 120B.
You need to wind up now. You have overstepped your time limit. The extension is also over. Please wind up.
Much obliged. Much obliged. Your Honor, a last point, and I would like to have only 1 minute extra to conclude my case. Much obliged, Your Honor. Your Honor, in addition to it, the counsel submits that the investigation done by the police is faulty and the benefit of doubt shall be given to the accused. Your Honor, if you may refer to Annexure A and Annexure C present on page number 50 and 51 of the compendium, the date of arrest in the arrest memo is 25th February, and RU has signed the memo 2 days prior to actual date of the arrest. Additionally, Your Honor, the time of arrest in FIR and charge sheet as presented on page number 47 and 48 shows that the police arrested the accused on at 10:55 hours, which is 10:55 a.m. on 25th February. However, according to the arrest memo, time of arrest is 11:20 p.m., 25th February. Moreover, Your Honor, these discrepancies are not just minor discrepancies, but show that the case is completely planted and fabricated. Therefore, Your Honor, according to the case of State of Punjab versus Rakesh Kumar, the apex court held that they, in the cases where a number of infirmities in the evidences produced by the prosecution, the benefit of doubt is given to the accused. Improper handling of investigation would lead to acquittal. Similarly, in the present case, such inconsistency in the evidences and investigation shall lead to immediate acquittal of the accused. Therefore, it is most humbly submitted and implored before the Honorable Court that the accused shall be acquitted of all the charges, as there lies more than just a reasonable doubt to prove the innocence of the accused. Unless I can be of any more assistance to the court, the counsel rests its argument and would like co-counsel to continue.
Am I audible? If you may please the court, this is counsel number 2 from the side of the defense in the matter of state NIA versus Sameer and others. Your Honors, counsel number 2 shall be dealing with issue number 2, that is convictions under 489B and C of the Indian Penal Code, and issue number 3, that is convictions under section 16, 17, 18, and 20 of the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act, along with the prayer. Your Honor, before starting with the submission, a very glaring error has to be pointed out by the counsel. Your Honor, the use of section 46 has been made from the side of the prosecution, yet, Your Honor, interpretation has been done only on the basis which support the case. Your Honor, section 46 states, as stated by the counsel, has been relied upon by the counsel. Yet, Your Honor, the provided clause has not been followed. Your Honor, provided it in the proviso clause, it has been stated that the contents of any wire, electronic or oral communication intercepted or evidence derived therefore shall not be received in evidence or otherwise disclosed in any trial, hearing or any other proceeding in any court unless each accused has been furnished with a copy of the order of the competent authority under the aforesaid law, under which the interception was directed, not less than any 10 days before the trial, hearing or proceeding. Yet, Your Honor, in the present matter, no report has been provided before the Honorable Court and provided before the accused and the counsel itself. And hence, Your Honor, it is humbly submitted that reliance cannot be placed upon section 46. And hence, Your Honor, to conclude this, it is further substantiated that as this proviso clause has been violated, this evidence is not admissible as under section 46 and should be taken under section 65B of the Evidence Act. Your Honor, the counsel will now move forward with the submissions from the side of the defense. Your Honor, it is humbly submitted before the Honorable Court that the present case is a robust example of authoritative figure using general public to justify its authority. Your Honor, in the present matter, wrongful conviction has been made under the pretense that the alleged accused in the present matter were carrying 500 notes of rupees 2,000 denomination with them while they were apprehended. Yet, Your Honor, the defense counsel will prove to you beyond any reasonable doubt that the case is a mere mirage full of lies. Your Honor, it is humbly submitted before the Honorable Court that in the present matter, the basic element required for convictions under 489B and C of the Indian Penal Code is absent. Your Honor, mens rea is defined in mens rea under 489B and C is defined in the case of Uma Shankar versus State of Chhattisgarh. Your Honor, mens rea under this has been defined as knowing or having reasons to believe the currency or banknotes to be forged or counterfeit. Furthermore, Your Honor, it was stated in this case that without the aforementioned mens rea, selling, buying or receiving from another person or otherwise trafficking is not enough to constitute an offense. Your Honor, it is humbly submitted before the Honorable Court that in the present matter, all the accused, that is Sameer, Monu and Kallu at the rate Mama, lack the requisite mens rea. Your Honor, it is humbly submitted that the statement made under 161 are not a reliable evidence. And even if reliance has to be placed and due consideration has to be given before the Honorable Court, it is stated that both the accused have stated completely that they had no knowledge regarding the same, that these particular notes or they were in possession of such notes. Furthermore, Your Honor, in the case of TJ Mohan versus State, the court held that mere recovery of the counterfeit note will not attract punishment under section 489C. It was stated in that case, Your Honor, that conviction will be attracted only if the person had the knowledge that the currency he possessed were counterfeit notes and that he intended to use them as genuine. Your Honor, it was stated that mere recovery of the counterfeit notes cannot attract the punishment under section 489. Your Honor, it is humbly submitted before the Honorable Court. In the present matter, even if there is absence of direct evidence, there is no circumstantial evidence as well that proves the same, that there was indeed mens rea that played a very vital role, and hence no derivation can be made under the statement. Furthermore, Your Honor, it is stated that both the accused under this statement have clearly stated that they had no knowledge regarding the same, and to further substantiate this, that miscarriage of justice has taken place, the counsel would like to divert the attention towards the seizure memo, as stated by my co-counsel, and I as well will be dividing the further that this particular matter is not about conviction, but rather miscarriage of justice. Your Honor, first of all, as stated by my co-counsel, that on the page, the seizure memo, Akash Singh has signed the particular memo on 22nd February. Yet, Your Honor, both the accused have been apprehended only on 25th February 2015. Your Honor, this is not a mere discrepancy before the Honorable Court that can be neglected. But, Your Honor, this show a malicious intent to cause harm or to cause ill to our counsel, to our accused. Furthermore, Your Honor, by putting reliance by the council number 1 as well on the case of A. Tajuddin versus Union of India, it was stated that merely because the seizure memo executed at the time of recovery was attested by 2 independent witnesses, that would not lend credibility to the same. Such credibility would attract to it only if the said 2 independent witnesses are produced as witnesses. Your Honor, in the present matter, absent of independent witness, that is Ravi Kumar, render the very same effect. Your Honor, it leads to not creating only a reasonable doubt, but a very big hole in the prosecution's case that there could have been any possibility other than what has taken place, that until unless is corroborated by that particular independent witness, it cannot be stated. And furthermore, Your Honor, Ravi Kumar is not stated as a punch witness before the Honorable Court, and hence reliance cannot be placed upon the seizure memo. Furthermore, Your Honor, it is firmly submitted before the Honorable Court that the NIA's investigation is not backed by any legal documented evidence, and that too creates a doubt in the minds of our. Your Honor, it is submitted before the Honorable Court that in the case of Kaptan Singh versus State of Madhya Pradesh, AIR 1997, it has been stated that it is a triad that the result of an investigation can never be a legal evidence. Your Honor, it is humbly submitted before the Honorable Court that the whole investigation, until and unless corroborated by direct/circumstantial dependable evidence, is not an evidence in itself, and it cannot be admissible in the court of law. And to further substantiate this, it is stated that the CDR reports do not prove the presence of mens rea, and hence no case can be made. Your Honor, the CDR report mainly show that in the present matter, certain individuals that are considered to be accused had connection amongst them. Yet, Your Honor, in the present matter, even if compliance certificate is absent and due consideration is placed on it, it is humbly submitted that the CDR report do not prove that the connection was indeed for carrying or trafficking such fake currency note from one place to another place to carry out an attack over Pulwama. It is humbly submitted that absence of such evidences and the discrepancy in the whole police investigation are not just mere incidents that have happened. Your Honor, it is humbly submitted that this show there could have been a possibility when the charges against the particular accused are framed, and hence, Your Honor, it is humbly submitted that until unless corroborated by particular circumstantial/dependable evidence, it is stated that as mens rea is not present, that is, no reasons are there to us to believe that the particular accused had reason or knowledge for the same. It is humbly submitted that convictions cannot be made under 489B and C of the Indian Penal Code. Your Honor, to further substantiate and move forward with the third issue, it is humbly submitted before the Honorable Court that this particular matter, as this particular matter does not fall under the definition of Section 15 of the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act 1967, presumption as stated by the Council cannot be taken under Section 43E Clause A of the said Act. Your Honor, in the case of State of Maharashtra versus Mirza Himayat Beg, Honorable Court held that it would not be possible to hold that mere recovery of stuff from the accused itself is sufficient to presumptively infer with the aid of Section 43E Clause A of the UAP Act that the accused had committed an offense of indulging in terrorist act as defined under Section 15 and punishable under 16. Furthermore, Your Honor, it was observed in that case that there must be some connection between the arms, explosive, etc. recovered from the possession of the accused and the arms, explosive, etc. used in the commission of offense of terrorist act, and this connection must be established by some relevant circumstances being brought on record by the prosecution so as to provide a reason for the court to believe in existence of such connection. Your Honor, it is humbly submitted before the Honorable Court that in the present matter, the CDR report, as stated by my co-counsel and further substantiated by the second counsel as well, that in the present matter, the CDR report do not prove the intention needed for any act to be committed. Furthermore, Your Honor, NIA's investigation, until and unless corroborated by a legal document or evidence, cannot be admissible as a proper legal evidence to prove the guilt for the same. And as Your Honor, it is submitted, as this particular act does not fall under the definition ambit of Section 15, Clause A, Subclause 3A, and backed by the explanation B, which defines high counterfeit notes, it is humbly submitted that the particular act cannot be charged under section 16 of the UAPA Act. And to further substantiate the same, it is humbly submitted before the Honorable Court that the subject matter under which the notes are considered counterfeit, high quality counterfeit, is absent. Your Honor, it is humbly submitted before the Honorable Court as stated by the prosecution in the and reporting reliance upon Samarjit Singh versus State of Punjab. On para number 44, it is clearly stated that the fake and genuine currency notes were also sent to the forensic science laboratory for comparison with currency notes recovered from the possession of the accused. In all the reports, it has been categorically mentioned that the questioned currency notes have been compared with relevant genuine currency note with the help of scientific aid. Your Honor, reliance cannot be placed upon this particular case because, Your Honor, in that particular case and this particular case, the very facts, that is, in that case, there was detailed forensic report, and in the present matter, even the preliminary report do not state that under which part does this particular notes fall as high counterfeit note, and hence, Your Honor, it is submitted that reliance cannot be placed upon that particular case, and it is to further substantiate this, it is humbly submitted that in the present matter, the rules as stated in investigation of high quality counterfeit Indian currency offences rule 2013 has not been followed, and this procedural fault has resulted in wrongful conviction or wrongful charging of the particular accused. Your Honor, the procedure as laid in section 6 clause 2 of the investigation of high quality counterfeit Indian currency offences rule as stated in page 39 of the compendium has not been followed. Your Honor, in that particular case, Your Honor, in that particular section, the proviso of subsection 2 of section 6 is violated. Your Honor, it is that proviso states that provided that the preliminary report may not contain a detailed forensic report, but may restrict itself to the question of whether the key security features as specified in third schedule to the Act have been imitated or compromised in the seized counterfeit currency note, and the complete report for the purpose of the prosecution shall be provided before the completion of investigation. Your Honor, it is humbly submitted before the Honorable Court that this proviso has been blatantly been violated. As Your Honor, firstly, the preliminary report as stated in the page 25 of the moot compromise, Your Honor, in that particular preliminary report, it is stated that on a random examination, the notes examined appear to be of high quality. Your Honor, it is submitted before the court that use of such naive terms cannot be admissible and convictions cannot be made under the basis of such terms. Your Honor, proof and concrete evidence should have been present that dictate that this particular note fall under the ambit of high quality counterfeit note. Furthermore, Your Honor, it is humbly submitted that in the present matter, the complete report has not been followed and has not been given to us, and as this report has not been given to us, it cannot be just presumed that these notes are indeed high quality counterfeit currency notes. Your Honor, even if the consideration is paid of these notes to be counterfeit notes, Your Honor, these notes are clearly not high quality counterfeit notes. And as stated by the co-counsel and I, that there was instance and there has been instance that our accused have been convicted on the basis solely that they were present in the train and no seizure memo or any other substances other than and not been backed by any independent witness. It is stated that these notes as do not fall under the ambit of high quality counterfeit note, convictions cannot be made for accused in the present matter, and hence it is submitted that no punishment shall be given to all the accused in the present matter. Furthermore, Your Honor, it is humbly submitted that the charge sheet in general cannot be relied upon as an evidence because, Your Honor, as stated in the personal search memo and the seizure memo, that a total of 3 mobile phones, 2 Aadhaar cards, and 2 train tickets were seized. However, Your Honor, the images that are attached to the charge sheet, in that image, only a single mobile phone, a single train ticket, and only 1 Aadhaar card has indicated. Your Honor, these are not just mere indiscrepancy that show that there could have been that there was instances where police might have failed to direct the evidence. Your Honor, it is humbly submitted. The conviction cannot be made because the whole charge sheet in the matter is not conclusive in itself and has many contradictions that not only contribute towards a chain of circumstantial evidence for the defense. It is humbly submitted that these instances are not to be ignored before the Honorable Court, and for this, the reliance is placed upon the case of State of Andhra Pradesh versus Kothalam Narsimullah, wherein the court held that in cases where there are number of infirmaries in the evidence produced by the prosecution, the benefit of doubt is given to the accused three. Your Honor, it was further stated that no proper handling of investigation would lead to acquittal. Your Honor, it is humbly submitted before the Honorable Court that in the present matter, the whole case of prosecution is based upon the statement made by the court, by the accused under 161. Yet, Your Honor, reliance is placed upon Rajendra Singh versus State of Uttar Pradesh, wherein the Honorable Court mentioned that a statement under 161 CRPC is not a substantive piece of evidence. Your Honor, other than this instance, the statement are not conclusive in itself. Furthermore, Your Honor, as stated by the counsel and I, that the CDR report are not proving to the point whether this particular knowledge was there and the particular intention was there to commit a crime. The counsel seeks permission to borrow 3 minutes from the honors to complete their whole argument.
Okay, by the clock.
Okay, thank you so much. Your Honor, and as there is no conclusive evidence to provide that connect all the accused to act that may have been committed, as stated by the counsel in itself, that may have been committed, it is humbly submitted due to the absence of direct and circumstantial evidences, no conviction shall be made under section 16. And to further substantiate, it is humbly submitted that any act done by the accused do not fall under purview of section 17, 18, and 20 of the UAP Act. Your Honor, reliance is placed upon the case of Pradeep Ram versus State of Jharkhand, wherein the Honorable Court held that mere possession of money and meeting with people is not evidence for raising fund, and an accused cannot be held liable under section 70 solely on the basis of possession and meeting with others. Your Honor, in the present matter, even if this consideration is placed on the case, there is no instance that prove that in fact both the accused along with Kallu at the Red Mama was in possession of such money that was to be used against the country and was to be used for attacking Pulwama. Furthermore, Your Honor, no evidence proof connection between all the accused and the money that was apprehended in that particular coach and not with the accused in itself. Until and unless corroborated by independent reliable witness, it cannot be proved that this particular note, which allegedly belonged to both the accused and was given on instruction of Kallu at the Red Mama, it is humbly submitted. Until and unless corroborated by independent witness, it cannot be proved that this amount of money was to be delivered to Peter for usage for conducting an attack or conspiracy against the security and integrity of a country, and hence this matter does not fall in the ambit of section 70. Your Honor, the third submission is whether this act falls under the ambit of section 18, and it is humbly submitted as stated by my co-counsel that even if was no conspiracy, and furthermore, Your Honor, to substantiate the same, it is humbly submitted that there is presence of no terrorist organization. Your Honor, other than the statement made by Rupinder Singh, IO, it is humbly submitted that there is no mention of Lashkar-e-Taiba, and hence, Your Honor, until and unless corroborated by any independent witness or independent reliable evidence, and reliance cannot be placed upon Shah Rukh Khan as well, because Your Honor, in his statement he has stated he has seen people going into the house. He has not stated in his statement that they went to the house for destruction. And so, Honor, it is humbly implored before the Honorable Court, and Your Honor, it is humbly submitted before the court that this is an hearsay evidence, and to further state that no conviction shall be made under section 18 and 20, and hence it is humbly submitted before the Honorable Court that conviction should not be made and acquitted, and the particular accused should be acquitted. If Your Honors have no preliminary questions, the counsel will now move forward with the prayer. Your Honor, wherefore in the lights of the facts stated, arguments advanced and authorities cited, it is most humbly prayed and implored before the Honorable Court of LD Special Judge, NIA, Patiala House, New Delhi, that it may graciously please to adjudge and declare and acquit the accused on the ground that firstly, the accused are not liable under section 120B, 121, 123, and 201 of the Indian Penal Code, along with 489B and C for alleged trafficking of counterfeit fake currency note, and thirdly, accused are not guilty for allegedly organizing and or attempting terrorist activities under section 16, 17, 18, and 20 of the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act, and or pass any order that the Honorable Court may deem fit in the interest of equity, justice, and good conscience. For this act of kindness, the defense shall duly be bound forever. It was an indeed pleading before the Honorable Judge. Much obliged.
Thank you.
If the Lordship may, the counsel will start with the rebuttal arguments.
All right.
Much obliged, Your Lordship.
How much time will you take in rebuttal?
2 minutes, Your Lordship.
Right.
Much obliged. Lordship, in this instant case, the learned prosecutor defense counsel has been misleading the bench from the very starting the argument. In this instant case, The clarification by the organizer were very clear. The date in seizure and date in arrest memo has been already clarified. It was 25. It can be also screenshot by my second speaker. And secondly, it is also submitted that in page 45, exhibit 4 of the moot proposition, where the district judge has examined the CFSL report, recovery, and also granted sanction. It is also screenshot by my second speaker. In the third line, the circumstances of the recovery, the examination of the expert opinion of the CFSL report, everything was done, and it was only after then the exhibit district judge granted the sanction for offences under UAP Act. And it is also stated that in this instant case, the defense counsel relied upon the Anwar versus PK Bashir. But in the Your Lordship, it is of the kind notice that in order Anwar versus PK Bashir was completely dealing with Section 65 of the Evidence Act. But in this instant case, the counsel placed a reliance on Section 46. And based on the Exhibit 4 and also the other relevant submission made by the counsel, it can be humbly submitted that there are sufficient evidence to prove that the accused involved in a terrorist activity, the accused involved and the accused attempted for a terrorist activity. Hence, Section 46 of UAP Act will be directly invoked in this instant case. Therefore, the counsel submits that CDR reports are circumstantial, but if the chain links of the circumstances depicted directly related to the guilt of the accused, then the accused can be punished based on circumstantial evidence. In this instant case, there are sufficient evidence to convict the accused against all the charges. That's all the humble submission. The Lordship have any questions?
The counsel seeks permission to give the sir rejoinders.
Sorry, I didn't get that. Are you saying something, Speaker One?
Your Honor, the counsel seeks permission to give the sir rejoinders.
No, there is no need for sir rejoinder. There is no need. I think both the teams have argued extremely well. They were very thorough and very well prepared. And very logically and with great confidence, poise and demeanor, arguments were put forth in a very cohesive and a coherent manner. And it was a pleasure hearing both sets of speakers. Unfortunately, one team has to win. But both of you, and in fact, all four of you, will certainly prove to be very good counsel. Keep up the hard work. And we are very happy to listen arguments from both the teams. Many thanks. Mr. Courtmaster, how do we share the marking scheme?
So either you can send the marking sheet on our mail, or either you can just WhatsApp us.
What's the mail?
court1@apdhc.organization.
Court1
@AP.
Just say it again. Court1.
Court1.apdhc@org. I just write it down.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Courtmaster, you can close the session now.
Yes, ma'am.
Just write down the email ID.
I'm doing.
Sorry to interrupt, but can we get just a gist of a feedback for our satisfaction, what we have to improve upon from defense or prosecution in any way, what we have to improve upon?
At this stage of your lives, there is nothing really that you can do. As and when you get onto the job and experience and deal with different kind of judges, experience will teach you everything. There is nothing that we can tell you to do or not to do. There is no straitjacket formula for advocacy. It depends on person to person, judge to judge, bench to bench, case to case. So there is nothing that we can tell you to do or not to do. Just be concise and brief in your arguments. If you have to argue, I'm not talking about this case, I'm talking about general cases. If you have to argue over a great length of time, then you take it from me that you have not been able to establish your case before the judge. But if you are brief and to the point and not repetitive, then always the judge will find you to be a better counsel. But again, at the cost of repetition, all 4 speakers were of sterling quality.
I just had one feedback for all of you, that all of you should also make cross references to the evidence on record in the facts of this case. You've only been referring to the law that you have researched, but I think you should also refer to the facts of the case, specifically the annexures and the exhibits. And while making your point, draw the attention of the bench to those facts specifically. And I think it was speaker number 1 when he was asking Ms. Pandey to put up documents on screen. You have to be patient and let the bench see the portion you want them to see. You were running away with your arguments, and Ms. Pandey's effort was getting lost in that. So if either you don't show it, considering you're in a moot court, you can dispense with that formality. But if you do take the pain to show it, then you must wait until we have finished reading it. Just these 2 feedbacks for you.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
All right. Thank you. Bye. See you.
Thank you, ma'am.
What's your pleasure?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. हो गया.
इसको ले लीजिएगा.